Welcome back to History Through Art. Did you guys have fun through that imperfection of art project that I made you do? I hope that you really had fun with that, because that's hysterical. How fun was that to draw with your non-dominant hand? You were probably incredibly frustrated, weren't you? Well, now we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about why history and art together. Okay, so again, I'm going to just look at my notes here. Now, history has been told through art since the beginning of time. Now, what does that mean? When was the beginning of time? Well, for creationists, we believe in a young earth. We believe that the beginning of time was anywhere between 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. That varies for us. We don't have a strict timeline on that because we were not there to observe time and what God was doing. Now, for evolutionists, they believe that the earth has been around for billions and billions of years. Okay, so we don't know. If you're an evolutionist, you still don't have an exact pinpoint time as well. So on both sides, we're not really sure exactly. We can't pinpoint the time because no one was there. Okay, so no one was there to observe what was happening. Right now, you can observe something around you and you can make a hypothesis from it. You can make a guess of what's going to happen from it. If you do a science project, you can see what's going to happen. You're observing it. You're watching it as it happens. But the beginning of time is something that no one was there to witness. That's why there's many theories out there. That's why evolution is still a theory. It is not a fact. For creationists, we believe that creation is a fact because it has been documented. And throughout history, many other cultures have actually told many of the same stories of a worldwide flood or how God created the heavens and the earth and people. They are very similar. That to me says that God must have given them insight as well. And we'll get through that as we start learning about how people started moving across the earth and how we became different cultures, different colors, and how we all speak differently. That's part of history, and we're going to learn that very soon. But first, we're going to just discuss why we're combining art and history. And because history has been told through art throughout time. Okay, so from what we know, the beginning of time is what we call prehistoric. Okay, and prehistoric means just something, a time that we're not really sure about. We don't really have physical proof of it. We don't have any idea of what was really happening. We can only guess. We can speculate. We can take some evidence and make ideas out of them, but we really don't know. We really don't understand why someone was drawing a very specific scene on a wall in a cave. We don't really know what that was. However, so the beginning of time we look at as creationists, we look at creation as the beginning of time. If you're an evolutionist, you believe in the Big Bang, or you believe that something slowly took place. Whereas creationists, we believe that God just made it happen in 6 literal days, not 6 billion years. That's the difference, okay? There are many Christians who believe in evolution, who believe that the 6 days represent thousands and thousands of years. However, if you read the account of creation, it will tell you that the sun went up and the sun went down. That tells us that's a literal day. Okay, so that's why as Christians, we really need to understand and take the Bible for what it says. The story of creation is not a poem. It is actually a historical account. Okay, so If we look at it that way, then we have to realize that the Bible is a book of history, which it really is. Nothing in the Bible is not true. Okay, there isn't anything in the Bible that is false. Many people who are even non-believers will tell you that they believe that the Bible is a book of history that tells the story of the Jewish people and other cultures that were around them. No one will deny these things. So if we're going to believe that the stories of Kings, or the book of Kings and the book of Chronicles, and we believe and we know for a fact that the Israelites were taken into exile in Babylonia, then why wouldn't we believe creation? Now, we know that there's books of poetry, like the book of Job is not a historical account, nor are the Psalms. But the Psalms are, in some sense, David's or whoever else was writing those Psalms. It was their way of telling the story or their prayers to God or representing a time that they were living in. Okay, so we know that the Bible, and a lot of people who are non-believers do believe the Bible to be a historical account. We also know about Noah's Ark. We know about the flood, and I will send you some links that you can explore the reality of a great worldwide flood. Even evolutionists, even non-believers are now figuring out that there was at one time a worldwide flood. And that is how we have many of the canyons and the mountains that we see today. And I am going to put some links in for you so that you can explore that a little bit deeper on your own. And I want you, as an evolutionist, please just bear with us. Just listen and open your mind to a different idea. Now, one thing right now on Netflix, there is a great documentary called Is Genesis History? Now, this is perfect for what we're learning about right now. So I would suggest that you take some time after this video and go to Netflix and look up Is Genesis History and just watch this documentary. You will find out that many scientists are now coming to this conclusion that there was a great flood, and that is how many of the things that we see today were formed. Not over billions of years, but over just maybe several minutes or even several hours. And some of you that are evolutionists are going, whoa, no way. Please listen, because most of our children have listened to evolution. We don't get another viewpoint. I know that growing up, that was the only viewpoint that I was given, and I wish that somebody would have given me different viewpoints and different ideas, because even right now evolutionists are coming to different conclusions about how the world started. In fact, a lot of scientists are even saying that it wasn't a big bang. So there's a lot of conflict going on in the scientific world about how the world started, even with atheists who don't believe in God. Okay? So then we're going to have cave art. Yeah, we're going to look at cave art, which is really cool, because in cave art, we get to see stories and how people lived before there were houses and communities and civilization, which we'll get into about ancient civilizations. Then we have Egyptian art. We move into that, and frescoes. So we want to know, why was art used? God created everything, and He gave us this ability to be artistic and creative. In fact, God commands us to be creators. We are creators. We're all creators. We've all been given a gift of art. We just don't know what it is yet. Do you know what your gift of art is yet? Are you trying to discover it since the last time that you saw this video? Did you try to figure out, where's my artistic ability? Do you paint? Do you sculpt? Do you play with clay? Do you like to build? Do you know architecture is a form of art? Even designing your house, the way you lay out your furniture is a form of art. You walk in, you want to create a place of peace, of comfort, of welcoming. That's art. Writing is a form of art. Storytelling is a form of art. So everything comes together as art. History was told through art, through a form of storytelling. They would tell stories to people that could not read. They also told stories because a lot of people, especially in the way back in time, in the medieval ages, people did not have access to a Bible. They only heard Bible stories in church, and it was usually in Latin, and most people didn't speak Latin, so they were just going to church and, I don't know, going through the motion. I was raised Catholic. I am not Catholic anymore, but I was raised Catholic, and I understand that whole thing of going through the motion and not really knowing why you're doing what you're doing. So art was such a great way to express the time, to tell people what was happening. And they used a lot of symbols to tell a story. And that symbol would only mean something to somebody from that time period. Now, we also see art that represents a time period that has a modern twist on it. The stories were there, the art was there for stories to tell about a period of time that we're not aware of. We weren't there. Like frescoes on a wall, the bull leaping from the Minoans. The bull leaping frescoes give us a great idea of what their culture was like. Now, we can't tell everything from those frescoes, but we can tell a little bit about their traditions. It tells us that they did bull leaping, that they would have one person holding the horns of the bull and another person that would literally do acrobats over the bull. We know this because we see many frescoes that depict that story. So that tells us that it was part of their culture. What a fantastic, great, wonderful prize we have in our possession of the world. To have these things from ancient times that gives us a great idea of what civilization was like for the Minoans, for the Egyptians. We get to learn about the Egyptians and their cultures and why they did what they did with their tombs, why they colored them in elaborate colors, why they had pictures on the wall in their graves, because it was something to do with the afterlife and what they believed, and we'll learn about that as well. Also, art is meant to be visually appealing. So we want our art not only to tell a story, but it has to be visually appealing. And again, I told you before in the last lesson that many people found the abstract and the impressionist to be blasphemous to the art world. And today, some of the modern art that we look at, some of us go, what is that? And why is that considered art? I'll show you something here in a minute that many people consider art. It's just a urinal. So we look at this urinal and we think, why is that art? It's a normal everyday thing. Somebody just put it there and said, hi, now this is art. So we have to ask ourselves, in modern art, is what we're doing really art, or is it just goofiness? That's up to you. That's up to the eyes of the beholder. Many people thought that this urinal was something quite spectacular and told a story of the times. What it was, I have no idea, but maybe we'll find out later when we start studying modern art. And art was also a great way. Now, the Bible tells us that we are, as parents, as grandparents, we are required to tell our story and pass it on from generation to generation to generation so that it's always carried on. Our story is always told. How many of you know the story of how your parents met? How many of you know about your grandparents and how they met? How many of you know where you came from, your genealogy line? How many of you know where you really came from? Maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. You came from somewhere, someplace, and from someone. Now, art has been carried on through generations, and they tell us these stories, right? We get to know the stories about the bull leaping because we see them, because they're still there for us to carry on to the next generation. We still see them. We still learn about them. And scientists are still looking at them as a way to figure out what the Minoans were like. What was their civilization like? What was their culture like? And the art gives us that great perspective to look into what they were doing at the time. So art is a way for us to carry on from generation to generation to generation to tell the story of history. So with that, we're going to stop this lesson, and then we'll move on to another one. So I will see you in a little bit.